50th time trying to go live. And so obviously this is not ideal. This isn't the exact space I wanted to be in. But if it'll work, then that's really all that counts, because I've tried to go live now 5 times, and I think that I need to get a router or something for the little space I'm staying in. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Supreme Court being completely and utterly bought, being completely bought. You know, it was one thing, I don't have my poster here in front of everybody, but I wanted to be able to go over it a little bit. As you know, the Supreme Court is appointed. And so when you know that the Supreme Court's appointed, you start to ask the question, well, how does the president get a name nominated? Stephen Breyer is retiring. And so then you think, oh, he's gonna make sure you get another liberal Supreme Court justice in there. But as you know, at the Supreme Court level, it doesn't really matter if you're a liberal or a conservative. What the job of the elites to do is to protect the big banking industry, the big pharma industry, the fossil fuel industry, and to protect government actors. What I'm talking about are legislators, I'm talking about judges. And over this last month, I've done an absolute ton of research on understanding how the powers that be were given absolute immunity, because so many of you would continue to chime in and talk about qualified immunity. So I wanted to become an expert on qualified immunity. And unfortunately, what I have found out is that our rights are completely and utterly stripped away by big capital, big business, and the appointment process of the Supreme Court. When you hear about Justice Breyer retiring, I don't even call them justices, I call them Supreme Court personnel. When you hear about Justice Breyer retiring, you have to then start to ask yourself, well, how does President Biden get a name to nominate? Follow me here. This is super important. You guys do me a favor, write down in here where you guys are watching from. Just type right down here where you guys are watching from. And then if you guys would, just reach over, see the little thumbs up button right down there? Just reach over and hit that thumbs up button right there. I'm gonna show you guys something today that's gonna absolutely blow your mind. It's gonna make you feel bad. And the reason it's gonna make you feel bad is because I don't have my poster here, but I wanna explain to you, and I'll just use words. The Supreme Court, the only job of the Supreme Court is to defend your civil liberties, is to defend your rights. That's what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. Any law that Congress writes, that the president then signs into law, the Supreme Court then is the arbitrator or the adjudicator of whether or not what has been written by the legislator and signed by the president is constitutional. That's the entire job of the Supreme Court. If you get arrested and thrown in a dungeon for a law in Florida that says it's illegal for you to have blonde hair, and you get arrested and put into a dungeon, they then can go back to the Bill of Rights, back to the Constitution, and say, wait a minute, it says every person here is entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Every person here has a right to self-expression. And we're getting into some First Amendment rights here. However, let me ask you guys a question. How many people here know how the president gets the name of the person that they're going to nominate to the Supreme Court? Does anybody know the answer? Does anybody know how the president gets the exact name of the person that they're going to nominate? Does anybody know that answer? Do you guys know the answer? Does anybody know? How do you think the president who's doing president stuff, who's running for governor of California, running for governor of Kansas, who's in the Senate, just trace back the history of presidents. Ronald Reagan was governor of California. You can just trace it back to these people who've been in government. Joe Biden was the congressman from Delaware, right? So we know these things. We know how you become the president of the United States is you have to run for a campaign after a campaign after a campaign, and then you can become president of the United States. That's how it works. And so you spend most of your life doing what? Campaigning, shaking people's hands, making friends, being likable so that people will vote for you for president of the United States. And then the president has limits to his power listed by the executive Article 2 of the Constitution is the executive articles of government. And so then you say to yourself, well, what is Article 3? Article 1 is the congressional branch of government. Article 3 is the judiciary branch of government, or the federal government. So then you start to say to yourself, how in the world does someone get appointed to the Supreme Court? Does anybody know the answer? Does anybody know the answer? Because remember, this is an appointed group of 9 people. So how do they get the name? How do they come up with the name? Who gives the name? Neil Gorsuch. Who gave that name? Who gave the name Amy Barrett Coney? Who gave that name? Who was the person who gave the name for Amy to be nominated to the Supreme Court? Does anybody know the answer? Does anybody know the answer? Can anybody just take a guess? What do you guys think? How do you think the president gets the name of the person that they're gonna nominate? Does anybody know that? Does anybody know the answer? Does anybody know the answer? I just want to see. I mean, what in your wildest dreams? What do you think? How do you think that the president gets the name of the people that he's going to nominate to the Supreme Court? Does anybody know the answer? And I won't keep you guessing for too long. And so, because I'm just going to post this on YouTube. So what we're going to look at today is we're going to listen to a guy named David Poster, who is the founder of the Daily Poster, and his name's David Ciorda. That's his name. And he's the founder of the Daily Poster. And his name is David Ciorda, and he has been following and studying the Supreme Court now for decades. And what he's going to say right here is going to show you exactly how the Supreme Court gets their nomination. And so without further ado, I'm just going to play it. And so here it is.
David Ciorda, great to see you, sir.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
Absolutely. So big news this week. Stephen Breyer, Supreme Court Justice, is retiring, allowing Biden and the Senate Democrats to fill his shoes. And you have a piece up at the Daily Poster. Let's go ahead and throw this up on the screen, where you say another Supreme Court corporatist would be a disaster. Now, I think a lot of people would be surprised to learn, because all they've heard from the media is, oh, Breyer's a liberal and he's a consistent, reliable vote on the liberal side of things, that he's been pretty bad where it comes to corporate power. First, lay out his legacy, and then we can talk about the moving forward.
Sure. Over the course of his career, Stephen Breyer has been a fairly reliable vote for the agenda of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is the biggest and most powerful corporate lobby group in America. So the Chamber files amicus briefs, which urge the court to rule this way or that way. And that's the best.
An amicus brief is when when a case goes to the Supreme Court. For example, Terry versus Ohio goes to the Supreme Court. And me, Chille, I'm a civil libertarian, so I write I'm not famous enough, popular enough, or rich enough, or elitist enough to submit an amicus brief. They won't even look at it. It has to be from the Federal Society, or from the Chamber of Commerce, or from the Bilderberg Group, right? It has to be from a big group or a really famous lawyer who's going to submit their opinion on how the Supreme Court should rule, on how the Supreme Court should hold the constitutionality of. So an amicus brief is when people will write into the Supreme Court panel. I don't call them justices because they're garbage. And they'll say, here's how we think you should hold what is constitutional and what is not. So when Terry versus Ohio came before the Supreme Court, a bunch of people wrote in and said, we think you should make sure that cops can stop and frisk people because of racism in America, whether I like it or not.
Way to know what large corporations in America really want. As the biggest and most powerful corporate lobby group in America. So the Chamber files amicus briefs, which urge the court to rule this way or that way. And that's the best way to know what large corporations in America really want. And over the course of his career, according to the data, he has voted with the Chamber of Commerce a majority of times that the Chamber of Commerce has weighed in on cases. So he has been a reliable vote against stronger antitrust enforcement. He has been a vote against various environmental issues when it comes, for instance, he was against a state mining ban. He voted to help empower energy companies to build pipelines through public lands. So the point being, we could go through the list here, but the point being is that Stephen Breyer, even though he was appointed by Bill Clinton, or maybe perhaps because he was appointed by Bill Clinton, he has been a reliable vote for big business.
Okay, let's go back to what I asked initially. What is the functionality of the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court's functionality is to make sure that the people and their rights are protected, that the civil liberties that you and I have are protected. When you talk about an antitrust Supreme Court, what that means is that what Mark Zuckerberg is. Mark Zuckerberg is a giant monopoly. And so the Supreme Court, if they support big business, then they're going to make sure that Facebook won't be broken up with WhatsApp and Instagram, which is the main ways to communicate on the internet. And so Stephen Breyer, what he has done since the beginning of his career is he's voted in the favor of big business. So is that looking out for your rights and my rights? No, it's not. So that means that if the Chamber of Commerce, which is the biggest financial group in America, if they're submitting amicus briefs on cases, then they're writing to the Supreme Court panel of judges and saying, here's how we think you should hold the constitutionality of this. Why in the world is the Supreme Court accepting an amicus brief from the Chamber of Commerce? That's not what the Supreme Court's supposed to do. The Supreme Court's supposed to defend our civil liberties to the death. That's what they're supposed to do. That's why they're appointed. That's why they don't have to run, so they can't be muddied up in politics. That's the whole idea of why the Supreme Court isn't elected. Now, we elected senators in the year 1913 with the 17th Amendment. Why did we do that? We did that because of absolute and total corruption. Stephen Breyer is celebrated as being some liberal Supreme Court justice. Let me tell you something. Stephen Breyer is a tyrant. He's a piece of garbage. And may God have mercy on his soul, because I hope he burns in hell. Because I'm a human being. I don't have the capacity to forgive someone who's done so much bad, who's done so many bad things to us, who has stripped away our rights, because you and I are commoners. If you're sitting here on YouTube right now on a Monday night listening to me talk, you're a commoner. You and I are commoners. You don't make over $1 billion a year. If you submit an amicus brief to the Supreme Court, they won't even look at it. They won't even open it, because you're a commoner. So what this guy is saying right here is that the way the president gets his list of names to nominate for the Supreme Court, it comes from the Federalist Society. It comes from the Chamber of Commerce. And what do they represent? Big business or ultra overtly Christian religion. That's what they represent, whether I like that or not. That's how Amy Barrett Coney got on the Supreme Court, because she's an overt Christian fundamentalist, which we don't want that. That goes against our First Amendment right to freedom of religion.
And the problem is that we live in an era where the Supreme Court has become very extremist, even in compared to recent courts. The Roberts Court has become very extremist when it comes to siding with big business. That essentially the Roberts Court, and let's remember John Roberts used to represent the Chamber of Commerce as a lawyer, that the Roberts Court has become a reliable, probably one of history's most reliable blockades of policy for big business.
So I'm just really glad that you're focusing on this. Nobody ever seems to understand that the law has immense implications for how big business operates. Can you just describe what it means exactly to side with the chamber and court? Like, what does that look like for people?
Okay, so John Roberts, before he was Supreme Court Justice of the United States, and remember, he's Supreme Court Justice because he was appointed. He didn't earn that position. We didn't vote him in. He was given the position of being the grand arbitrator, the grand adjudicator of our civil liberties. That was given to John Roberts. He didn't earn it. He was the most popular elitist among the most popular financial institution called the Chamber of Commerce. John Roberts was the lawyer for the Chamber of Commerce, the #1 big business financial institution in America. Today, after being the lawyer for the Chamber of Commerce, John Roberts is now the Supreme Chief Justice of the United States of America, whose job is to defend our civil liberties. And instead of that, John Roberts and his entire Supreme Court has voted to uphold big business and keep us down. That's why minimum wage doesn't raise. That's why we don't have any rights in this country, because the most elite appoint the most elite who are going to protect the most elite. Go to Federalist Paper number 3. Federalist Paper number 3, written by John Jay. He's going to say, and I quote, "If we appoint the right men in the right places, meaning you can create an elitist society as long as you appointed people into the right place.
For people.
Sure. I mean, look, actually, the Roberts Court, and let's remember John Roberts used to represent the Chamber of Commerce as a lawyer, that the Roberts Court has become a reliable, probably one of history's most reliable blockades of policy for big business.
So I'm just really glad that you're focusing on this. Nobody ever seems to understand that the law has immense implications for how big business operates. Can you just describe what it means exactly to side with the chamber in court? Like, what does that look like for people?
Sure. I mean, look, Stephen Breyer didn't support all of the chamber's amicus briefs, but broadly speaking, the Chamber of Commerce is not only putting forward judicial nominee names. I mean, that's one of the things that it has been doing, but these amicus briefs push the court on everything from union rights to federal agencies' regulatory power to the ability of, for instance, the SEC to crack down on Wall Street banks. Breyer, by the way, was a vote for a ruling that essentially limited the SEC's ability to punish corporate criminals. So the point being is that the Chamber of Commerce is in these divisive cases where there are questions about the law. Can the SEC, for instance, seriously punish a Wall Street bank? The Chamber of Commerce is filing detailed amicus briefs to try to essentially influence those rulings to make sure the court comes down on the side of corporate power.
Did you hear what he just said? The richest financial institution in the United States of America is submitting to the president a list of Supreme Court nominees. And so why does big business submit a great big list to the president? Because those lists of judges will defend and protect big business. And what is the job of the Supreme Court? To uphold our constitutional rights. And instead of that, because it's appointed, you have this disgusting corruption that has impaled the American dream, that has impaled our rights, that has impaled liberty, that has impaled freedom. It's put a spike right through it and went through the other side. And we don't have any freedom anymore because we have the most elite and the richest corporations appointing judges to the Supreme Court who will defend the most elite and the richest corporations. We dealt with this from 1897 to 1937, called the Lochner era of the Supreme Court, and now it's even worse. The Earl Warren Court from 1953 to 1969 stripped away all of our liberty, all of our freedom. And that was right after the Lochner era that ended in 1937. So they gave all the power to big business from 1897 to 1937. And then the Warren Court from 1953 till 1969 stripped away all liberty and all freedom. So when you give all the power to big business and strip away all the power of the people, you have the recipe for a police state, prison state, because you're going to protect the big business while you push down the people. You know, and I'm going to do a breakdown of Pearson versus Ray, because when you listen to Pierce, all you people who are concerned about qualified immunity, I've been studying it like crazy for a month, just researching how qualified immunity happens. How does it happen? Pearson versus Ray, if you listen to it, I challenge anybody to go to oyez.org, oyez.org, and listen to Pearson versus Ray. Listen to the oral arguments, and you're going to find out that qualified immunity is 100% based on racism and based on making sure government officials can't be punished. They started with legislators and judges, and then it was just a natural progression to go down to cops in 1967.
And David, I mean, this is kind of a layup for you, but I want to go ahead and ask it. Why is it that the media doesn't explain this well? I mean, we've all heard a lot, and I don't want to downplay these decisions are important. Obergefell, you know, the right for gay people to get married, the right of women to choose for themselves, Roe versus Wade. These are important things, but we hear a lot about those cases, and most people have never heard anything about these other instances where, you know, their work lives and their economic reality are impacted by what the court does.
Or the Supreme Court.
Why is that, David Sirota?
Well, corporate media is corporate. So corporate media isn't all that interested in telling the story of how the corporate America's most powerful lobby group is winning case after case after case at the high court.
Okay, so who's on the Chamber of Commerce? What group of businesses are in the Chamber of Commerce? The New York Times, MSNBC, CNN. Name a big corporate entity and they are a part of the Chamber of Commerce. They have a vested interest, the owners of those corporations, to make sure that you don't find out that the Chamber of Commerce is submitting the list of names that the president will pick. You think that Biden came out and said, I'm going to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court, and he didn't already know who was going to be? He's known who was going to be for years. As soon as he was elected, the Chamber of Commerce submitted a list of names to him and said, these black women right here will toe the corporate line. These list of black women right here will do exactly as they're told. They'll vote how they're supposed to vote to make sure that the most elite keep the most elite. And so who's in the Chamber of Commerce? The biggest businesses. Who owns all the media in America? The biggest businesses. If this channel gets too popular, Sergey will turn this channel off. Sergey Brin, he will turn this channel off. If we get to the place where we're going to affect the Supreme Court and how elitists get all of the good treatment because the most elite make sure that the most elite are appointed who are going to protect big business, just go back to that 2010 case, Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, which gave all this crazy money to super PACs. How'd that happen? How'd that happen? Why is it that corporations can put all the money they want into dark money called super PACs, and then you get advertisements saying, oh, Chille de Castro, he's bad, here's why he's bad, you don't want to vote for him, and you have no idea who funded that campaign. You have no idea. It could have been all of the big corporations, which is exactly who it will be when I run for governor, because I'm not going to take a single dime of this corporate money, not a single penny. These people are crooks. These people are absolute crooks.
So there's essentially it's kind of a baked in bias, I would argue, that corporate media is not interested in this. Now, I would also say that a lot of these cases that deal with corporate power are esoteric. They deal with seemingly small, very detailed issues. There was a ruling, for instance, can pensioners sue their retirement fund if their retirement fund is mismanaging their money? And it deals with very arcane parts of the law. So in some ways, writing about that can seem very detailed, very in the weeds. But again, it is sort of the machine thrumming in the background that the Congress will pass something or an agency will try to do something, and then a few years later, an esoteric case will come to the court. The Chamber of Commerce will put forward an amicus brief, and bam, the agency is limited, the law is gutted or overturned, and that keeps happening over and over and over again.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly? So what he's saying is that the legislature, the people who we vote for, will write a law. And then the president will sign that law into effect that says you can't create dams in Ohio, just for an example. It's not true, I'm just giving you guys a hypothetical. And they'll say you can no longer build a dam. The state of Ohio, the legislature writes a law that says we're not going to have any more dams in the state of Ohio, and then the president will sign that into effect. And then a couple years will pass, a few years, 5 years, 10 years, however long, and then Exxon or Mobil or Tesoro will go, we really need to put a dam in Ohio to get the pipeline to go further. So we want to put a dam in Ohio. So then they'll sue the state of Ohio. It'll be Exxon versus Ohio. And then that will get certiorari, which goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court will then rule that it's unconstitutional for the state of Ohio to ban dams. You and I never hear about it. It never goes through the media. You never find out about it. You have to be so tuned into SCOTUS blog. SCOTUS blog, you guys can listen to, I read it every day. SCOTUS blog, that's what it's called, SCOTUS blog. You should be tuned in and reading that. And what these people do is then strip away our rights to have a free, clean America, because Exxon sued the state of Ohio and said that that is an unconstitutional law. And the people who they rubber stamped and put on the Supreme Court then made sure that it was unconstitutional. And the law that was written by legislators in Ohio that the people of Ohio wanted And the governor of Ohio, who's no longer governor anymore, he's not even the governor anymore, he signed the law into effect, and then the Supreme Court undoes the law. They undo it, and they say it's unconstitutional. But it's not unconstitutional. What they're doing is a crime because they're appointed and they're not elected.
Okay, and what you end up with at the end of the day is a legal system that has, in many cases, closed the courthouse doors to plaintiffs who are trying to hold big corporations accountable. You have a legal architecture that is rigged against the American worker, that is rigged against the environment. And by the way, one last thing on Stephen Breyer. Back in 2010, months after the Citizens United decision, I mean, he had the nerve to go out and say that the Roberts Court is not actually pro-business.
The Citizens United Court, what he's talking about, is the 2010 decision of Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission that gave corporations the same right as any human being to spend as much money as they wanted on elections. That's why the presidential election now is a $2 billion, $3 billion industry for big corporations to saturate the market with their propaganda and lies so that you and I will be forced to believe that we're voting for a candidate that you and I want, and we don't want that person. You got the same thing in Trump that you got in Biden. Those two guys are identical. The way they present themselves is different, but Trump and Biden are identical. I would even go as far as to say that Biden is more racist than Trump. How do I know that? Because if you watch on this channel, Power Corrupts Absolutely, it's a video I made about 5 months ago, it shows that Joe Biden is a total racist. You have no idea. If you don't know, now you know. And I highly recommend that you watch Power Corrupts Absolutely. It's on this channel.
Which is so ridiculous. And I think we've seen these justices go out lately trying to defend the legitimacy of the court, because I think they sense that more and more people have caught on to how rigged this court is.
It's rigged.
But the problem is that in a Supreme Court nomination fight, my guess is we're not going to hear very much about economic issues, even though that is mostly what the court is doing on a day-to-day basis. That we're going to hear a lot about these, definitely, I agree with you, important hot-button social issues, but we will not hear near almost anything
about
when it comes to what the court is doing on a day-to-day basis for big business.
Big technology.
And I would posit one other reason, which is that those hot-button social issues, they break down along convenient lines. Republicans are on this side and the liberals are on that side,
right.
And that makes it easy. And these economic issues, as you're pointing out, a lot of times, RBG was on the wrong side of some of those issues. Liberal icon Stephen Breyer is on the wrong side of those issues. Justice Hagan. So it complicates this narrative of, if you're at Fox News, Republicans good and Democrats bad. And if you're at CNN or MSNBC, the reverse. It makes it a lot more complicated and exposes actually there's a lot of treachery to go around here.
And my fear, honestly, about this nomination fight, truly, is that another Stephen Breyer would just lock in almost a guarantee that the Supreme Court remains a corporate court. That even the discourse, the debate, how this nomination is discussed already, you haven't seen nearly any discussion about what could be done to make the court more on the side of workers. There's been discussions about what demographic groups may be represented in the nomination pick. You've seen questions about the politics of the nomination, but there's been almost no discussion about the economic implications. I remember back in the Neil Gorsuch nomination, for like 1 minute, economic issues and corporate power issues came up in a very big way about that discussion about his ruling with the trucker who was freezing on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And it came up for 1 second, and it was a big story for like 1 second. And I remember being like, wow, this is the first time I can remember an economic or corporate power issue actually being at the center of a Supreme Court nomination fight. And then boom, it was gone. And so what I worry about is that without that kind of discussion, without that kind of focus on the nominee's record and what kind of nominee Biden is going to put forward, that you get another Stephen Breyer, and it almost guarantees to lock in this corporate court, which has been putting its boot on the neck of the American worker for 16 years plus.
And by the way...
So you understand what he's saying? He's saying that none of us want Mark Zuckerberg to own all of the social media in America. We don't want Zuckerberg to control every asset of social media in America. But do you hear about any cases against Facebook? Do you hear about any cases that go to the Supreme Court regarding big corporations to break up monopolies that are antitrust? You don't hear about any of those things. You never do. And then when the Supreme Court personnel make the holding on that case, they get a bunch of amicus briefs from Facebook, from Exxon, from Target, from Walmart. Walmart's one of the biggest corporations in America. You don't think that there's cases that go to the Supreme Court that are about Walmart? There are, but you don't hear about them because you have an unelected branch of elitists who are appointed by the most elite people, and you're not a part of that group. You wonder why Walmart, here, let me ask you guys a question. How come Walmart can employ people at a slave wage where they can't make a living unless they apply for food stamps and public assistance? And that apparatus of business, that business model can still go on. This is why. This is the reason why. Because the Supreme Court, when it gets to the highest court in the land, they say that legislation that makes you have to get a livable wage is unconstitutional. Who are they voting on the side of? Of Walmart. They're voting on the side of Walmart. And now that there's more and more of us who are starting, and you know, I'm one of those people who's educating my other peers and my other friends, and I'm telling you guys, the Supreme Court has to be elected. We have got to elect the Supreme Court and break up these 9 appointed monarchs who work for big business, who work for fossil fuels, work for corporations.
According to the chart that you have in your piece, Justice Gorsuch, the most reliable vote for the Chamber of Commerce of all of the justices who are currently sitting.
There you go. Yeah, no. That's
this is why everybody should subscribe to your work, by the way, because you're talking about these issues in a way that you won't find anywhere else. And we're always grateful for your time, David. Thank you.
The Daily Poster is a blog. It's a website called The Daily Poster, and it's ran by David Sirota. That's Sirota. It's ran by David Sirota. And so that's what we're talking about is how does the president decide who he's going to nominate for the Supreme Court? Well, we know John Roberts was he was the lawyer for the Chamber of Commerce. If John Roberts was the lawyer for the Chamber of Commerce, the biggest money commerce in the world, because America is the #1 economy. I guess China might be #1 now, whatever. So, but #1 and 2, we're neck and neck, China and the United States. If John Roberts was the lawyer for the Chamber of Commerce, and now he's Chief Justice of the United States, who's he going to do the bidding for? For you, peasant, or for the Chamber of Commerce? He's going to do the bidding for the Chamber of Commerce. That's who he's going to do the bidding for. Hold on one second. Let me grab some. Okay, so tomorrow morning I'm gonna ship out the t-shirts and sweatshirts. So this one's going to Rob Carter. This one's going to Jennifer Poley. This one's going to David Topper. This one's going to Perry Sjogren. I had some people who didn't get back to me with their information. So if your name is not on this list, then I'm not shipping your t-shirt tomorrow morning or your sweatshirt tomorrow morning. So you got to get back to me as soon as you can. I do have XL, double XL, and I have 4 sweatshirts left in stock. Some people already previously said they were going to buy them, and you know how the internet is. Sometimes they don't come back around. So Perry Sjogren. This one's for Paul DeMarco. Paul DeMarco's shirt's going out tomorrow. Jody Fox, that's your shirt. If you guys want a shirt or a sweatshirt, you got to hit me up at DeleteLawZ@gmail. Rigo Guerrero. Marilyn Stevens, this is your shirt right here. Joseph Hart, this is your shirt right here. This is a sweatshirt going to Richard. No, this is a double XL shirt for Richard Curley. This is a sweatshirt going to Chris Poley. This is a overturned Terry sweatshirt going to Cody. It's a Native American last name. I don't want to butcher it. Cody, this is your sweatshirt right here. This is a sweatshirt going to David Bruce. David Bruce, your sweatshirt goes out in the morning. I do have a few sweatshirts and t-shirts left, just people who didn't get back to me in time. So, or maybe they just fell off. You know what I mean? This is Pat's right here. This is Pat's sweatshirt. This goes out in the morning. This is Patrick Thomas. This is your t-shirt. Goes out in the morning. This one goes to Al Capri. This is your sweatshirt, Al. This goes out in the morning. This one is to T. Roy. T. Roy, the moderator. T. Roy, you in here? What's going on, brother? This is for the moderator, T. Roy. This is your sweatshirt right here. Or your t-shirt right there, sorry. This one is for Craig Clark. This is Craig Clark's t-shirt. I have Craig Clark's t-shirt. This one ships tomorrow morning as well. Just a few left here. Tim Clark in Oklahoma. This goes out to you, Tim. Joff. Every time you see the word Joff spelled with a G, I know it's Jeff, but I always say Joff. Omira. This is your small t-shirt, Omira. And then this one goes out to my buddy Shane in Boston. I don't think he's in Boston anymore. And this one goes out to Robert Stevens. This is yours. And then the last one goes to Chille, or Sly Shy. So I've got 4 sweatshirts left in stock. If you guys want a sweatshirt, you better hit me up right away, because I have those are just 4 people who didn't get back to me or didn't send me in their payment, and I would love to give more away, but I just can't. I give away a few t-shirts on this one, and I gave away 2 sweatshirts. So yeah, but I just can't give away too many of them. So if you guys want one, you got to hit me up at DeleteLawZ@gmail.com. DeleteLawZ with a Z at gmail.com. And on that email, please send me your address, your phone number, your cell phone number, your address, your email address, your cell phone number, and then also what size t-shirt. I only have XL. I have large XL and double XL t-shirts in, and I only have a few of each. And then the sweatshirt size is XL. I'm gonna do double XL sweatshirts on the next run, but I wanna get these sweatshirts out as soon as I can. There's only 4 left, so if you guys wanna get a sweatshirt, hit me up. I wanted to do a little longer live tonight, but the internet, it wasn't working where I'm at, and so I just did this little short 10-minute video, and this video is called Inside Retiring Liberal Justice's Pro-Corporate Record, and that's on Breaking Points with Crystal and Sager. This video came from Breaking Points with Crystal and Sager. So if you guys want a t-shirt, you got to hit me up on, or a sweatshirt, you got to hit me up on email at DeleteLawZ@gmail.com. So any other questions, anything else? I'm going to try to get out of here. I'm going to try to get to the gym, even though it's super late. I've dedicated myself to this fitness thing I'm doing, and I'm just going to get, I'm already in shape, but I just want to get in incredible shape. So any questions at all? Now, you guys, I want to show you this. I'm going to show you this screenshot real quick. So this was the video that I watched that I just showed you guys. That's the name of the video right there. If you guys want to get a screenshot of that, make sure that you take a look at that. Go and watch and listen to that video. It's Crystal and Sager, and it's inside this Liberal Justice Supreme Court's corporate record. And this is what I just now listened to. So this is what you just heard on this channel. If you guys want to go and I really highly recommend that you go and you listen to this. It's only really quick because David doesn't have a video channel. He's got a website, which is a blog. And then he lists out a lot of things about the Supreme Court, the Daily Poster, which is really great to listen to. So now you know what video you can go and look at, the video that we just reviewed. You can listen to the video and then come back and listen to the video here. All right, cool. Any questions or anything? Anything for anybody? Anybody? Is anybody still here? Are you guys still here? Is anybody still in this room? Are you guys still here? Are you still here? Can you at least write where you're from? I don't see anybody's information on here. Yeah, we have to elect the Supreme Court. It's not going to work like this. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, it is just really strange. You know, are you guys reading the community posts that I'm putting out? You guys should be reading. I put out posts on community that show little screenshots of stuff that I read that you should be reading and you should be learning so that we can have a better society and a better culture. You know, if you sit there and you play video games all day and you don't learn anything new and expand your brain, then you're doing America a disservice. You have to learn as much information as you can so that your brain can expand. The more information that you put in your brain, the more efficiently your brain works. So you want to put as much information as you can in your noggin. You want to learn as much information as you can. This whole week, I've just been listening to oral arguments by the Supreme Court, just been listening to the oral arguments. I just put it on and I listen to it when I pedal at the gym or whatever I'm doing. So you guys should be really listening and learning things that are going to expand your mind, or we're going to have a really bad society, a really bad culture. So, all right. Anybody else? Anybody else? I'm going to get out of here. If your name wasn't on that list and you ordered a t-shirt from me, you need to let me know before I sell it to someone else. Let me know. If your name was not on that list and you ordered a t-shirt from me, you need to let me know. You need to send me an email at DeleteLawZ@gmail.com so I can make sure that I ship these. And I tell you, I'm just going to do it. This is how I'm just going to do it from now on. I'm just going to, all right. All right, I'm going to get out of here. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. And that video, again, is on Crystal and Sagar inside Retiring Liberal Justices Pro-Corporate Record. Cool. So you guys watch this video. Do me a favor, when I drop this video, make sure you like it. Make sure you share this video. Show people that the Supreme Court is a corrupt organization because it's appointed. And so you have the biggest businesses submitting the names to the president of who they need to appoint so that the biggest businesses can have the biggest advantages. I mean, how freaking morbid is that? It literally makes me want to curse. How morbid is that? The biggest businesses submit the list of names to the president, and the president picks from that name. And then those list of names, whoever they pick to be nominated to the Supreme Court, they then do the bidding of big corporate America. And you wonder why our country's in disarray. You wonder why. It's only working for the top 1%. All right, I'm out of here. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Later.